Good. All right, thank you everybody for coming out today. Appreciate it. We are the Next Resources Capstone Group. My name is Riley Bannock. I primarily worked on the back end of things, as well as some of the front end pages for interacting with the server on our website.
I'm Alexis Sari. I work mostly with the connectivity between the front end and the back end, as well as some stuff with the server.
I'm Austin Tower. I mostly worked on the front end, especially the shift assignment page.
So this is our contact information if you want to get in contact with any of us. We have both of our sponsors up there, as well as the three of us. So what our company is Next Resources. They're a fracking company in western North Dakota. What they're looking for is a product that allows dispatchers to send messages to crew members. What we're going to do is provide them with a prototype of that, and then from there they can give their product, either expand it to multiple locations within their own company, or to sell it to other locations or to other companies.
Now let's talk about the terms that we will use throughout this presentation. A job is a job at a location, and a shift is a period of work at a job, like morning shift, day shift, night shift. And a crew member is an employee of Next Resources that is being assigned to a shift, and the dispatcher will assign the crew members. Now let's talk about the problems and opportunities of this project. The current issue at Next Resources is that the dispatcher has to assign to all of the crew members and notify them all through text message individually. The problem with that is, of course, it's going to take a lot of time. Now, our solution will meet their short-term needs by giving a website that allows the dispatchers to assign the crew members to their shifts. In addition, it allows text messages to be instantly sent to all of the other crew members with a click of a button. And, last but not least, our system gives the crew members a way to respond by just clicking yes or no on the message. And for the long-term goals, Next Resources plans on selling this to other companies. Now, our solution provides a UI-based way to assign crew to their shifts. It allows them to be notified automatically, and it makes it easy for them to confirm. And, of course, this is all stored on a database, so no paper.
All right, so just to take a quick and brief trip down memory lane for our development process, we had 4 different sprints, like most of the groups in our class. For the first sprint, it was primarily focused on just getting used to all the different tools that we had worked with. We had never worked with the Nexmo API, for example, which is the service that we use for text messaging. We also were not familiar with Bootstrap really at all, which is kind of what we use to actually design our pages. So during the first sprint, we got familiar with those tools, and we actually were able to set up our server. That includes, the Internet Information Services, which is kind of the basic thing for Microsoft servers, as well as setting the template and the foundation for actually making our SQL database and populating it with tables and different entries. So for Sprint 2, we set up our domain and had a point to our IP, as well as integrated things such as Bootstrap and Link. If you've ever used Link before, it's a super nice way of getting around PHP. Basically just treats the different tables as objects in your program. We also, since we had the foundation set, we created our SQL tables. Throughout the development process, we probably changed those tables about 4 or 5 times, but at the very least, we set the foundation for those. As well as set up remote access to our server via a connection string. This was super nice because as we're testing things, we didn't actually need to upload everything to our server. We could just run it locally, and then it would just grab everything it needed from our website. And then for Sprint 3, we started to solidify what we wanted everything to really look like. So this includes Austin's shift assignment page, for example. Had probably a couple hour meetings with our sponsors going through what exactly we wanted it to look like. As well as we started to get all these different tools that we're working with in Sprint 1 and 2, and then just started implementing them into our front end. For Sprint 4, we pretty much just finalized the way we wanted the UI to look like. This includes getting all of the pages that you use to interact with the database up and running. So, adding jobs or reviewing jobs. Same thing with shifts and users. And that's kind of the general overview of what we did during that time. A couple tools that we use that were really useful. Obviously, we needed a server. We used a Windows 2012 R2 server. They have something called Internet Information Services, or IIS, which is just how you host your actual website, as well as we hosted our SQL database on there. And then we use Bootstrap, which the primary thing we used for that was just using the grid layout that they provide for you. It allows you to kind of divide the page into 12 different sections and then put things exactly where you want them to be. We also use Nexmo, which is what we use to actually send the text messages. The way that works is you load a URL and then it sends it to Nexmo, and then they process your account key and the actual message you want to send, and then they just send it right on out. Link, like we've talked about before, is probably one of our more useful tools. It allowed us to avoid a lot of the PHP. You basically take the tables from your actual server, and then you just put it into your project, and you're able to declare everything as if it was an object. So, the job table I can just declare as job, new job, rather than actually like going through all the different PHP.
So then some major functions. Our project is designed for the dispatcher for the website. So a dispatcher can create new jobs or shifts, as well as new users. A user is a dispatcher or a crew member. Dispatchers can also assign crew members to shifts, send out those mass text messages that get sent to every single crew member who's on a shift. And then dispatchers can also view which crew members have confirmed yes or confirmed no about whether or not they'll be attending a shift. From the crew member side, it starts with a text message from the dispatcher. The crew member can see a text message, click on a link that's inside there, be sent to a web page, and either hit a button of yes or no for whether or not they're going to be there for the shift.
All right, so now we're going to head into the demo here quick. I'm just going to set that up. Awesome. So this is kind of the basic template. This is just the home page. There's really not a ton going on here other than just some basic information and then different navigation points. So we're going to jump right into the jobs portion of the page. So on this page, we have every single job that we have in our database. And the way that this works is we have a bunch of code in C# that basically just runs through our database and references a couple different classes that we have to actually build these different containers. And then just puts it on the page based off what it has. We also have a basic filter on the left here. So for today, if we wanted to do first, it'll just show everything that's happening after the first. And then as kind of if you wanted to add a new job, for example, we have a different add job page. So for this, I'll just do, hopefully not misspell anything. So then upon submitting the job, it just redirects you right back to the job review page, and you can see that it's been added to the actual page. So we also kind of have a similar layout for shifts. The way that we did this is we have every single job, and then within each job is every single shift that coordinates with that. On this page, you can also send out the actual SMS to the different crew members that are working on each shift. So I don't know if you guys want to turn the volume on your phone just for fun. So if I select this morning shift here, and then I want to send out the notifications, it's going to think for a hot second. So when you receive a text message, it'll have a lot of the different basic information that you need to actually get to your shift. So this includes the actual time that it's starting, the latitude start and the longitude start, as well as some of the job information. Alexis, do you just want to talk about the actual link that you get with that too?
Yeah, so inside your text message, you have some contents for the primary details of your shift. So if you like, you can click on the link that's inside of there. It sends you to one of our web pages. It has the job that you're going to be working on, your shift. It has the times that you'll be working, the locations. And then from there, you can hit either yes or no, whether or not you're going to be attending the shift. Everything is live, so I'll refresh the page, Riley.
So as you can see, both Austin and Alexis decided they wanted to confirm their shifts. They did this by just following that link and then clicking that button and then updated the database. And of course, once we refresh the page, it'll show that in green that they have confirmed. If either of them really wanted to, they could have said, no, I'm not going to be there. And then again, that'll just say they have confirmed that no, they're not going to be at that shift. And we just chose red text for that. Once you confirm to something, however, that blue text just basically indicates that you haven't even looked at it. So once you click something, it will change it to a color, and you can't change it back to has not even looked at or has not confirmed. We do have an add shift page. We're not going to go through and fill all this out, as much fun as form filling is. But that's just kind of a general idea of how you would actually fill out a shift. This looks for every single job that we have in our database. And then you can select one of those, as well as your time range and everything else that you need to actually declare a shift. So now I'm going to pass it over to Austin here, who's going to explain the shift assignment page.
All right, the shift assignment page is the page that the dispatchers will use to assign the crew to their jobs. We have moved to March 9th, which is a day that we know that there are shifts. So now let's just select the first job, and now it will display all of the selected shifts for the selected job. Now, of course, for each shift, if you hover over the top title of them, it'll give you all the details. And in addition, underneath is all of the crew that have been assigned to that job. Now let's just select that shift. So, now you can remove one. Let's just remove me. All right. Now I'm not on there. Now let's just say, let's add Tori to it. All right, now he is on there. And now, just because if you have more than 4 shifts, you can't see them all, let's just go to the next one. Now, unfortunately we don't have any, so let's just go back. Now, and so one more thing is that now you can't see all of them, but that's because they're all at different heights. So let's just scroll down a little. So from this you can tell is that the top one starts at 2 a.m. and ends at 11 a.m. So that concludes the shift assignment page, and now let's go back.
And then just to kind of show you here, so on this shift page, Tori is now assigned and Austin has been removed from it. So if we wanted to, we could resend out those text messages and then go from there. And that's everything you had, correct?
Yes.
Cool. Perfect. All right, so to kind of get into a little bit of behind the scenes on how the actual website works, we have the SQL database. This is kind of the general setup. As we've mentioned before, each one of these tables can be represented as an object within our program. So both the job, shift, and the user, for example. So the shift assignment table, we pretty much just use that to actually get multiple crew members assigned to one different shift. And then this is kind of an example of one of the classes that we use to actually build the different like dynamic web pages for the job review page and the shift review page. Rather than like declaring all these HTML elements over and over and over again, we just created a couple of different methods within this class, which we then only had to call maybe 1 or 2 lines, and then maybe run a for loop for every single job or shift we had in the actual database.
Now, on the shift assignment page, one of the big issues I had was what is known as postback. In other words, when you hit a button, the page would refresh. However, after that, it would update, so the updates would not be shown. So to fix that, I added onto each button something that would cause the page to reload.
And this is some example of the code for actually interacting with the database and our tables. So again, we're using link that allows us to access the tables like objects and allows us to create new rows inside of there. So if you look at the top one, that job, temp job, new equals new job, that is accessing the job table. And then the contents that's below it, and then this insert on submit and submit changes does, as you saw, automatically submit it to our server. And then the stuff that Riley was showing you grabs it from the server, refreshes on the refresh of the page. If you look lower, then this submit job button, which is where we added the job earlier in our presentation, is all that a programmer needs to type for adding a new job is this job next resources implementation, which is part of the class above, .create job, give it the parameters from the text boxes, and then hit enter, and everything works. And then some issues and risks. The largest risk that we had throughout the project was just our understanding of how all of our different pieces worked and how they would interact with each other. So one of them was, the Nexmo API. We just kind of chose Nexmo because it said that they could send multiple text messages at once, and we hoped that it worked. And then another one was, setting up ASP.NET with our server, getting our connection string working. Again, they were risks because we didn't know if it would work, and they didn't become issues because we managed to figure it out. There's also, Austin did a great job of dynamically populating his shift assignment page, as well as, sometimes there's post-back issues that he managed to fix. And then one of the biggest questions that we had during the midterm was how are we going to scale our project? So we went to our sponsors about that and we asked, how many people are we going to have to deal with in this database? And they essentially told us, assume that there's going to be no more than about 100 crew members at a time. The way that Next Resources can expand their project to more locations is by giving a new dispatcher at a different location a clean slate as far as the database goes. So dispatcher in Minot is going to have a completely different database than the one that's in Fargo. And then again, that's how it would expand for other companies.
So to kind of review everything that happened during our project, we certainly learned quite a bit. And one of the themes that really discussed was pretty much communication and being able to just plan for everything that happened. So for example, we had a bunch of regular meetings. We probably met every Tuesday with our sponsor, and then every Thursday we did a lot of documentation. And then we spent at least 1 or 2 days, primarily on the weekend, actually doing the development of our project. Having this consistency made sure that we're all on the same page. I mean, again, we saw each other every 2 to 3 days, whether we liked it or not. And we were able to keep in touch and understand what we were struggling with and what we weren't struggling with. One of the things we learned towards the end that we kind of wish we would have done more consistently was actually just setting up maybe 1 or 2 or 3 small goals that just absolutely needed to happen or needed to get done, otherwise we'd be behind. When we had a time crunch, it proved really useful just to know that we had 4 to 5 hours if we really needed it, or if it took 2 hours, it took 2 hours. But we were just always making consistent progress, at least towards the end with that strategy. A lot of things we learned too when working as a team was kind of this divide and conquer. I mean, each of us had different aspects of the project that we were working on. And rather, if we wanted to change something on, I don't know, for example, I wanted to change something on Lexus's part of the project that she'd been working on, rather than trying to relearn it or trying to get through and, relearn it and then just rewrite it, I just ended up just talking to her and she could normally figure it out in 10 to 15 minutes. Obviously, we learned how to set up a website, which we'd never really known how to do before, as well as a database that we could connect to that, as well as just using a few different APIs and tools that we weren't familiar with. And again, communication is just super huge as a team. So for future groups, we recommend always have those regular physical meetings. A couple times a week was really nice for us, especially being able to see our sponsor in person once a week was super helpful. And then also start early and start often. I mean, we had a weird issue with Visual Studio where they have a folder that automatically gets created every single time, but if you try and load that folder up to GitHub, it would cause a big conflict issue. And that took us, an hour or 2 to figure out, and it would have been nice, or it's nice that we dealt with that early rather than 2 or 3 months into the project.
So let's talk about how the project can move forward into the future. Now, one of the things that can be expanded on is that the crew members can respond using just text messages instead of having to follow a link. This would allow non-smartphones to be used to respond. In addition, we hope to improve ease of use. And one thing that we wish we could have done, but we hope that will be done, is that that the equipment and trailers can be added on to be assigned. And one improvement for the future is that we hope that the shift assignment page will be cleaned up. Now, let's conclude after the 20-odd minutes that we've been speaking. Now, the problem at Next Resources is that the dispatcher has to text every crew member, which takes an enormous amount of time. Our solution will allow dispatchers to go to a website and assign crew members. In addition, we will give them a button where they can just click it and it'll send messages to all of the crew members. And last but not least, we'll give the crew members an easy way to confirm and an easy way for the dispatchers to see that they have confirmed.
Are there any questions?
A little tiny one and then a thought question. A little tiny one is, if you went through where you added a person after you'd sent out the mass
Yeah.
Yes.
thing. If you resend, who gets it?
Right now it would resend to everybody, but we can just make a new method that only grabs the people who haven't been sent messages yet. Right now it would send to everybody.
And then the other question is just, what the ability to have equipment was mentioned at the very beginning but wasn't included, which was fine because I really like what you did. Have you done anything? Can you name something you've done in your design to make it easier to deal with equipment or
Yeah.
less hard? Or
Yeah, so we have a start location and an ending location. So if there's a delivery of a truck and a trailer being delivered from site A to site B, that starting and ending location would be a good spot to start with, as far as the constraints go.
Yeah, we're hoping that that would still allow for deliveries at the very least, so somebody knew where they could start and end with that.
So you used a Nexmo API to distribute multiple texts.
Yep.
Are there fees associated with the use of that, or whoever is distributing those texts, or a limit on per day or per month? Or?
So I don't remember the exact cost. Was it like
Half a cent?
I think it's even less than that.
It's 0.005 of a cent to send a text message. Our sponsors were nice enough to make us an account, hook up all of our email addresses, and then they gave us $12.
Okay.
Yeah.
About 2 of them.
And then as far as like how many you can send, Nexmo says about 30 text messages a second. So for example, when we initially did it, we did not take that into account. So we blasted, all 5 or 6 text messages, and only like the first one would go through because the server couldn't pick it all up. So we just kind of had to tell our server to wait for a little bit after every single text message. That's kind of why you'll notice why it maybe takes at least a couple seconds for it to process and send out all those messages.
Thank you.